It feels weird to talk about just one aspect of Devil May Cry 5, because I could sum up the entire game in one word: bombastic. DMC5 is an evocative game that desperately tries to feel like a series that hasn't aged a day. Still, with so much smoke and sexy style sprayed on top of it, it doesn't feel iteratively stale, it's exuberantly excellent. But that's how I could describe the whole game. My job is to narrow it down to how the world of DMC5 looks and feels. The last word I would use to describe DMC5's world is complex. On a practical level, at least. Visually, there's an interesting dichotomy between the crumbled remains of a European city overwhelmed by an invading force of fleshy hellspawn. The city in question, Redgrave, is architecturally fascinating. Sections of the city look exactly like London, such as the bridge the game starts on, as well as its neon-lit districts. It seems like an assortment of slick streets that fit perfectly into this new age of Devil May Cry. But particular areas of Redgrave look Vatican-esque. The white chalk cinder blocks, the ironically holy structures, despite the impious invaders. Redgrave starts to feel like an amalgamation of London and some kind of Middle Eastern city like Jerusalem. While these themes don't mesh well together by themselves, and it's somewhat jarring to transition between the two so frequently, each urban biome reflects a different part of the overall style of Devil May Cry. The London-based segments reflects the coolness of the series, with its highlighted purples complementing the punk rock style character designs and presentations. As well as its banging soundtrack and outrageous gameplay, it feels like the Neo Devil May Cry fans waited 6 years for. Whilst the Sistine nature of its more religious districts reflects the more biblical aspects of the franchise, those of ancient legends and powerful demons, the tale of two brothers destined to hate each other, the ancient evils that seep into the surface every installment. That's where the appeal of Devil May Cry comes from. The bombastic what-in-the-hell moments of the series, and the quirky gameplay set in the background of an ecclesiastical epic about the forces of heaven and hell in a divine comedy worthy of Broadway. The contrast between severe and silly is what gives DMC its unique identity, and what makes it so memorable. But the exciting dichotomy I alluded to earlier wasn't between the districts of a devastated city. It was the contrast of the demolished, desolate rubble of the human world and the gushing flesh and blood of the demon world. These sections of the game feel not alive, but present. It doesn't feel like I'm walking around inside a living creature. It's more like I never feel alone, like something is inside the walls rather than the walls being alive themselves. I think the fleshy arenas are played out at this point. So many games have levels set inside living creatures or just covered in meat moss. Off the top of my head, there's Doom, Halo 3, Resident Evil 7, StarCraft 2, and even last week's game Carrion. Devil May Cry 5 doesn't really do anything interesting with the setting, and I'm not sure it reflects any particular aspect of the series. Maybe the violence, but this place is far too drear, and the gore of this game is so jolly. As such, it feels like generic hell and demon arenas, and I think the meat moss needs to be put on the back burner for a while. Although, I do need to highlight these transportation blood veins, or whatever they are, specifically their animations. Now, I don't have a pimple-popping fetish or anything, still, it is obscenely satisfying to wade your way into these tubes, watching the blood bubbles pop as you squeeze your way past them. It scratches an itch in my brain, and the tingle that runs down my spine when I imagine Dante surging along the tunnel, popping them at high speeds, makes my whole body shake. It's like if someone put me in a tunnel of bubble wrap and I had Catwoman's claws on, and the bubble wrap was filled with small dollops of strawberry milkshake. Oh my god, I had to stop writing and go drinking up and go. I lost myself for a minute there, but the point is, these veins are one of the most oddly satisfying things I have ever experienced in a video game. But at the start of this review, I said that DMC5 is trying to feel like an old game, And while I've spoken about how the environmental design is primarily terrific, I still need to talk about the level design. DMC5's level design just doesn't feel that interesting to me. It's really just a network of hallways leading me into the next square-shaped arena for an enemy encounter. There are some cool arenas, like this escalator in the train station that has fun with an unconventional geometry layout, but most encounters have a boring layout. In contrast to something like Bayonetta, where enemy encounters incorporate setting, perspective, and even gravity, DMC5 just feels completely outclassed in its bombasticism, which isn't a good thing when it's trying to go as far as possible with its outrageousness. I should preface that previous statement by saying that some of these boss arenas are fantastic, specifically King Cerberus, Goliath, and the final boss. But the issue is, I specifically like these arenas for their visual design and not for their level design, so I wish there was some cool way of making the arenas feel like part of the fight, rather than just the setting. Once again, I'd point to Bayonetta. But I always like to save one of my favourite things for last. And though it probably won't be a surprise to any of you who've played this game, but the music is godlike, or more accurately, devil-like. Now, for a game about biblical aspects, you wouldn't expect the majority of its tracks to be electro-synths, but that's the DMC difference. It's a game that tries so hard to get up in your face and make sure you never forget it, so it needs something loud and proud to overwhelm you and send you into the trance of juggle-battling enemies. The fact that the tracks change depending on your score is enough reason to motivate me to go wild on my controller in the hopes of fumbling my way to the chorus of these synthetic serenades. But, of course, I still need to mention the crown jewel of DMC5's soundtrack, the industrial rock masterpiece, Devil Trigger. It's a song with such an appropriate build, as typically a fight starts out slow, and you try to build up to a perfect juggling action. In turn, the song is about trying to break out of your shell and go wild, and just as you enter the flow, the beat magnificently drops and the game achieves nirvana. The lyrics of Devil Trigger resonate with someone trying to prove themselves in one way or another, as the song seems to be about someone, in this case Nero, who is frustrated that someone, Dante, doesn't recognize him for his talents. It's something we can all relate to at one point in our lives, so on top of having one of the best earworm chorus lines ever recorded, the bang bangs of the chorus are the apex of the build, before the wild electronic guitar loses itself in a frenzy of chords and blood. DMC5 has a spectacular world. The divergence of its inanimate and organic environmental styles is a treat to behold. Its rip-roaring soundtrack creates an ecstasy of excitement in the players as it synchronizes your adrenaline with that of your characters. DMC5 might just be one of the most goresome games I've ever played.